kick things off and start. All right. So I think we are right on 3:02, and we have people slowly rolling in. So let's kick this off without further ado. So first things first, a very, very good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to the inaugural session of the India Pro Bono Week 2025. I'm Shaun Vaz, the legal officer for the Asia Pacific jurisdiction with Trustlaw, and we are delighted to have your participation as we kick off a week that celebrates the power of legal expertise for social good. This year's theme, which is growing access to pro bono, is all about building bridges between lawyers and communities, between classrooms and courtrooms, and between passion and purpose. But before we dive in, a quick reminder, please participate by sharing any questions and comments that you have in the chat, and we'll be very happy to address them at the very end. A quick thought to start us off. Pro bono isn't charity. It's justice in continuous action. And this week is all about making those actions more impactful. This inaugural session will establish a common framework for understanding pro bono work and examine the vital role of university legal aid in strengthening our justice ecosystem. So our lineup for you today includes opening remarks from steering committee members of India Pro Bono Week 2025, Trustlaw and Advocates for International Development, or A4ID, a plenary address from Professor Anup Surendranath, and a panel discussion with Advocate Aparimita Pratap and Advocate Raju Ram, led by Rohit Sharma of Awaaz Leadership Labs, on how law schools can transform access to justice. So, to start us off, I warmly invite Joanita Britto Menon, Senior Legal Program Manager, Asia at Trustlaw by Thomson Reuters Foundation, to share opening remarks. Joanita, over to you.
Thank you, Shaun, and good afternoon, everyone. It is my absolute privilege to welcome you all to India Pro Bono Week 2025, a landmark initiative that celebrates, explores, and reimagines the incredible tradition of pro bono legal services in our country. Let me begin by what we mean when we say pro bono. According to us at Trustlaw, the Thomson Reuters Foundation's global pro bono legal service, pro bono is defined as free legal assistance provided by lawyers to individuals, communities, and organizations who cannot afford legal representation. It encompasses work done for the public good, advancing access to justice, supporting civil society, protecting human rights, and empowering the marginalized. But here's what's equally important. Not all free legal work is pro bono. Work done for friends and family, discounted services for commercial clients, or legal work serving a lawyer's own interests, these do not fall under the pro bono umbrella. True pro bono is driven by a commitment to justice and the public interest without expectation of payment or personal gain. So why are we here? Why India Pro Bono Week 2025? Well, Indian lawyers have a rich, decades-old history of pro bono work, even if it hasn't always been called that. From the freedom struggle to landmark public interest litigations, Indian lawyers have stood at the forefront of social change. Yet, despite this noble tradition, the pro bono ecosystem in India remains largely unorganized. Much of the structured work happens through legal aid initiatives, but beyond that, the landscape is fragmented. The truth is, pro bono is taking place across India. Law students volunteering at clinics, young advocates taking on cases for vulnerable clients, corporate lawyers advising NGOs. These are all pro bono. But these efforts often happen in silos without recognition, coordination, or support. India Pro Bono Week is our attempt to change that. We are creating a space for dialogue, bringing together law students, solo practitioners, corporate law firms, civil society organizations, and policymakers. This week is about celebrating what we are already doing, learning from each other, and building a more organized, sustainable, and impactful pro bono culture in India. None of this would have been possible without our incredible partners. I want to extend heartfelt gratitude to our co-steering committee member, Advocates for International Development, our session partners, Awaaz Leadership Labs, Honeywell, Nishit Desai Associates, and White & Case, and our knowledge partners, Access to Justice Exchange, Babsicle, BTG Advaya, Advocate Hema Srinivasan, Pandya Poonawalla and Associates, and Pro Bono Week Org, as well as Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas and Co. Your partnership is a statement that pro bono matters, that access to justice matters, and that we are stronger together. We intend to make India Pro Bono Week an annual event held every year in the last week of November. Over the next week, we have a lineup of multiple events. Please visit our website at indiaprobonoweek.in to register and participate. The next slide will show you the number of events that we have lined up across the next 5 days. And before I conclude, let me leave you with this thought. Pro bono is not charity. It is justice in action. It is our professional responsibility, our moral imperative, and our collective strength. This week, let's come together to honor that tradition, amplify our impact, and chart a new course for pro bono in India. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being part of this incredible journey. Let's make India Pro Bono Week 2025 truly unforgettable.
Thank you, Joanita, for that insightful overview and for helping us establish what pro bono truly means. Next, I'm very pleased to invite Yasmin Batliwala MBE, Chief Executive of Advocates for International Development and A4ID, to share a few words. Yasmin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Greetings. On behalf of all of us at Advocates for International Development, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the opening session of Pro Bono Week in India. This, as you've heard, is the second year that a week has been dedicated to showcasing the wonderful work that the legal profession is doing in India, and doing so pro bono. It is an inspiring testament to the commitment, energy, and leadership of the Indian legal community. So today is not just a celebration. It is a clear signal that the movement for justice, equality, and service is gaining momentum, as you've heard from Joanita, across India. Let me begin by extending heartfelt thanks to everyone attending: the lawyers, law firms, in-house teams, civil society partners, academics, judges, and students who contribute to this growing ecosystem of pro bono. Your dedication shows that the law is more than a profession. It is a public good, a force that can change lives, uplift communities, and strengthen societies. At A4ID, when we speak about pro bono, we mean something quite specific: the voluntary application of legal expertise to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. And to support those working to create a fairer, safer, and more sustainable world. For us, pro bono is not simply an act of charity. It is a strategic, powerful way for the legal professionals to use their skills to build systems, strengthen institutions, and enable development. It's about creating long-term solutions and empowering those who might otherwise never have access to the law. And nowhere is this more vital than in India. After all, India has one of the most vibrant, diverse, and intellectually rich legal communities in the world. Yet for millions across the country, rural communities, women and girls, people with disabilities, informal workers, as well as those living in poverty, access to justice remains a significant challenge. Structural inequalities, geographic barriers, and resource limitations means that the law can feel distant, even unreachable. And this is where pro bono becomes truly transformative. Pro bono in India is not merely about helping individuals navigate the legal system, although that does remain crucial. It's also about strengthening the very foundations of justice, supporting NGOs working at the grassroots, helping social enterprises grow sustainably, assisting governments and institutions to design and implement robust legal frameworks, and contributing to efforts that protect human rights, enhance environmental governance, and promote gender equality. Through the partnerships we facilitate at A4ID, we see the potential of how Indian lawyers can shape real change by drafting legislation, by supporting climate justice initiatives, by empowering local organizations, and by ensuring that those on the margins are not forgotten. This is the power of India's legal community, immense talent directed towards public good. As we launch this year's Pro Bono Week, I hope all of us will reflect not just on what has been achieved, but what remains possible. Because the need is great, because the moment is urgent, and because the law, when placed in the hands of those committed to justice, can be one of the most powerful tools of transformation we have. So let me start this first session with a call to action. Whether you're a senior partner or a trainee, an in-house counsel or a student, your skills matter. Your time matters. Your commitment can open doors that have remained closed for too long. And I urge you to look at the talents you possess and ask yourself, how can I use my legal skills to empower others? How can I build much more of a just India? And how can I contribute to a world where no one is left behind? This week is a celebration, yes, but it's also an invitation to lead, to serve, and to continue to build pro bono culture that reflects the best of the legal profession. And on that note, I look forward to the inspiring week ahead. And with that, I open the first session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yasmin, for those inspiring and invigorating words. We now move to the plenary address. It is my honor to introduce Professor Anup Surendranath, who's Professor of Law at National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, or NALSAR, in Hyderabad, to deliver the plenary speech. Professor Surendranath is also Executive Director of the Square Circle Clinic, which provides pro bono research and representative criminal justice support to citizens on death trial throughout Pune. Professor Surendranath, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaun. I assume you can hear me. Is that all right? Right. Thank you for having me here today, and it's a pleasure to be here, and it's such a fantastic initiative, and I hope it goes from strength to strength. In my 10 minutes that I have, I just want to address the question of legal aid societies and universities and access to justice. For the purpose of these comments, I assume access to justice to mean a much larger set of concerns than just merely criminal justice. And it can mean access to justice across so many other rights-bearing instruments that the Constitution has set up, various schemes have set up, and that the law schools can do a lot in that. So I have a much broader imagination. But before I get into that, our own work out of the law school in Hyderabad, that's NALSAR, and before that at National Law University, Delhi. Just to give a sense of what has happened out of these law schools, of a law school in India, we've provided extensive representation to prisoners sentenced to death in India, in the Supreme Court and various high courts, right? Our work, we currently represent about 70% of all death row prisoners in the Supreme Court, and our work has led to 32 acquittals of death row prisoners and a commutation for about 59 others. And we also represent under trials in Pune and Nagpur districts over the last 6 years. So there is work happening out of the law school for legal defense, legal criminal defense in the trial court and the appellate courts. And it has been an incredible journey to do this work out of law schools. And it comes as a challenge in the sense that very often we are asked in terms of why should a law school get into something like this, right? And I think, is it the job of a law school to do this on the one hand? And other is also to the journey of having built that work and that credibility that lawyers appear for us pro bono in these high stakes matters, only to say that the law schools sit at this intersection of academia, research, and practice. And it is possible to sit at that intersection. And I think law schools need to start believing that there is a social and constitutional obligation to provide these access to justice services, and not just in the criminal law space, right? I think as law schools in a global south country where there is limited institutional capacity, law schools can no longer view access to justice as something that they do for their students to learn. Rather, I think it is an obligation to fill the access to justice gap that exists in societies like ours. And I think once that shift in perspective and the changing lens that clinical education or intervention in access to justice efforts is not meant to educate our students. That cannot be the primary purpose, right? That exposure is only incidental, and it should only be incidental. The moment institutions step into spaces to provide access to justice services, the client or the services towards whom it is targeted have to be at the center of this. The question that law schools must ask is, what does it take to provide top-notch access to justice services, and then work backwards from there. Very often, and I don't think it's a pretty story to write back home, and having been in Indian legal academia for now nearly more than 13 years, it is not a pretty story as to what is happening to access to justice services out of Indian law schools. And that has and this is not the forum to assess that and why that is so and what is happening in Indian legal education. But I think at the heart of it is a lack of recognition about that constitutional obligation, right? Law schools often view this as something that is good for students, right? If we can do it, so be it. And to the extent we can do it, that is good enough, right? They themselves don't see these legal institutions of education as core part of filling the access to justice gap. Neither do they see themselves like that, neither do they perceive themselves like that, and neither does the legal aid system perceive law schools in that manner. Even the legal aid system, while there has been various attempts to involve law schools, at best it is a peripheral involvement. And I think that needs serious reconsideration. And I say it needs serious reconsideration from the legal aid system because I think we all need to understand that the access to justice demands of this country, from the poorest and the most socioeconomically vulnerable sections, those access to justice needs cannot be met by state legal aid institutions alone. And I think anyone who gets into that, who gets into the weeds on this, will see that. For example, amongst India's under trials, right, who form 75% of India's prison population, who are yet to be found guilty, utilization of free state legal aid is around 7 to 8%. And that is free state legal aid. And on the one hand, and it is a tragic conundrum that while we know that our under trials belong to the poorest and the most socially vulnerable sections of our country, yet there is great diffidence and reluctance to use state legal aid, right? And therefore, we need to imagine that we need to think beyond state legal aid institutions, beyond in the sense, of course, the state has an obligation, but they alone are not going to meet this need. And very often we talk of pendency in India's legal system, that there is docket explosion, that our courts are handling these everlasting cases and the volume is so high, and you get these ridiculous numbers of how many judges we need and how many decades it will take for us to resolve these cases. But I think equally important to understand is the conundrum, right, or the irony that on the one hand we have docket explosion, and on the other hand we also have docket exclusion, right? When I say docket exclusion, the people approaching India's courts, right, for whom the system works, belong to a certain section, and vast sections of our population are excluded from this, from accepting or utilizing the various systems that we have put in place. And I think core to this is the idea that we put a state legal aid system in place in the late 80s and the early 90s. And ever since then, we haven't really done an assessment of has this worked or not. And I think many of us who are involved in the access to justice space in various ways, be it criminal justice or civil justice, right, will tell you that some things work and some things don't. And it is very anecdotal. And I don't think India's massive legal aid system can rely on that kind of anecdotal evidence. There has been no systematic analytical study of how India's legal aid system has performed. And I think it is a massive research project waiting to be done. And the law schools must take the lead in doing it, right? And unless we know how this system we've put in place for the last 3 decades or more has been functioning, we really can't go about curating a cure for it, right? And I think very often lack of evidence-based policy making lies at the core of this problem, right? That we are not studying it in a systematic manner. Neither are the legal aid institutions putting in place processes to study it in a systematic manner. And unless law schools step into that role in a far more proactive manner, and this need not, and I'm not making a case for only criminal justice intervention, right? It could be across access to justice for many things. It could be your labor rights, it could be welfare rights, education, even just getting a ration card made. But all of that must center the focus on the beneficiary, on who's entitled to it as a constitutional right, and what does it mean to provide legal aid for them at a certain quality. We cannot start from it in terms of let's see what we can do. Now, for that, and I see that I just have a minute or so left, if I'm correct. In that sense, there is a lot of difficult internal conversation required in India's law schools and law colleges on how to prioritize access to justice. There are many systemic reasons that prevent prioritization of access to justice in our legal education and in justice education, right? And those hard questions need to be asked. We cannot view access to justice in India's law schools as only something people do out of their passion or their interest on top of everything else they are asked to do. Any meaningful study of Indian legal education will show you that faculty are overworked and, of course, underpaid, right, in its public law education system. And legal aid is only put on everything else. Institutional prioritization of legal aid cannot be, or access to justice cannot be that institutions allow or permit these interventions. They need to move from a culture of being permissible to a culture of encouragement. And that institutional shift is not going to be easy. But I think that lies at the foundation of the challenges we face in this space. So I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Surendranath, for that, for the thought-provoking address. We now turn to our panel discussion, which will explore how university-level legal aid can transform both legal education and community access to justice. I'm delighted to invite Mr. Rohit Sharma to moderate this conversation. Rohit is the founder of Awaaz Leadership Labs and law firm Reddy. He is also a researcher at Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asian Institute and has been a Thomson Reuters Foundation changemaker. Over to you, Rohit, to introduce the panelists and moderate the discussion ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shaun. Thank you so much, Anup, for that wonderful speech. Can you guys hear me properly? Great. So first of all, thank you. I'm joined by two amazing people on this panel, and I was very, very excited to speak with them, Aparimita and Raju. I'll start first with Aparimita, who was my college senior, and also someone who has taught me so many things without her knowing. She was the one who calmed me down on my recruitment day, telling me that, Rohit, your stories matter. And she has experience with law firms, with litigation offices, with pro bono spaces, and none better than Paramita to tell us about the pro bono culture and the struggles from university to post college level as well. So thank you so much, Paramita, for the help, for the love you showed in college. Second panel, I'm joined by Raju, and Raju is currently director of Zenith Society for Socio-Legal Empowerment. I met Raju when he was advocating for mess workers' rights in NLA Odisha. I got to know about his story, and then I reached out to him. And we both of us also sort of credits Professor Shamnath Bashir in some way, because he got us some of our folks together. And Raju currently works with Sahari Adivasi community in Gwalior and Shivpuri in Madhya Pradesh. And more importantly, Raju is also, like Professor Anup, work closely with law students as well as pro bono lawyers, so also bring a very rich experience of working with university as well as post university interventions. So thank you so much for coming on Monday. And I'll first start with Raju. I think just on building with what Professor Anup said, that what has been your experience of working with university legal aid societies, and how has been your experience with activating legal aid societies and connecting it with them lawyers from your panel? How has been your experience with Zenith?
Thank you, Rohit, and the India Pro Bono for bringing us on one platform and discussing about the access to justice and legal aid societies in India. If I talk about Zenith's work in universities in activating legal aid societies, we have started this work in 2022 and have continued for almost a year, but currently it is not functional. But that apart, the experience that shows us is that students are very, very enthusiastic about learning by doing, but they don't get much opportunities. So we thought about engaging with them, and initial struggle that we faced was even the connecting with the university and access to the universities, because it was very difficult for us, because we were also a new organization in the field, and we faced that trust building issue with universities itself. We had After that, we had tried to engage with the student after a long time, and we were able to open and activate legal aid clinics in 5-6 universities in the Gwalior and Shivpuri district of Madhya Pradesh, where we trained students regarding drafting skills, research, and even as small as motivating students to participate in public hearings and the department level application drafting, even assisting Sahariya Adivasis in drafting small application for ration card, even for application for Janman Awas Yojana, etc. So initially it was tough, but once we were able to build the trust with university, it became little easy for us. So, and when we connect these students with lawyers are not interested in engaging new student, in their work. So that is also a challenge for us. So we kind of engaged these students with the Zenith, and we started working with them, training them, and after sending them to lawyers for internship and other work, voluntary work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raju. And Aparimita, I will just build on what Raju said, that lawyers are not interested in that level of engagement with students. So my first part of it, the question is that what has been your experience, that what are the kind of things which a pro bono lawyer would require from a student? So that's my first part of the question. And second is, what from your experience and the research study you did with your previous organization, MAP, what are the scalable models of pro bono delivery which can work in Indian context?
Thank you, Rohit. Firstly, thank you so much for such a kind introduction. And going to the question that you asked regarding students and pro bono lawyers. So the first thing that we usually see, that has just been my experience in what a pro bono lawyer requires, is they actually need assistance with research, sometimes with help with drafting. And the problem that we see in panels, that I was in my previous organization, we were developing a panel of lawyers who had agreed to give legal aid assistance pro bono to survivors of gender-based violence. Now, there we saw lawyers from different stages in their life. We saw lawyers who had just started practice. They were very young, probably working in somebody's chamber. We also had lawyers who were mid-level, who had just gone independent, who really had more time to do this work, but also had a lot more pressure to create their own setup, looking for more paid work. And then the third type of chambers that we saw was essentially a seniors chamber, which had like set of juniors that would assist the senior do that work. But that kind of chamber setup would primarily take up like more strategic litigation kind of matters. So now we had like a combined panel of all these different stages of lawyers, but for the primary day-to-day direct assistance work was being done by your young lawyers, the ones who had just gone independent or just started practicing. So there, what we identified is that they had a need, that because of shortage of time, probably they're working with somebody else, they needed help with research and drafting. So in fact, there's this organization called Sahyog, which I think was a really small setup that had started in National University of Juridical Sciences. And what they did is that they started connecting students to such lawyers who had these research needs. So they would act as like an intermediary and basically tell students that, okay, there is this one particular lawyer who's looking for assistance on such and such matter. If you're interested, apply for it. So I found it to be personally very beneficial, because there were days when the workload was a lot. It was also difficult to really get like that kind of assistance more on an urgent basis. And I really found a law student to be very helpful in that aspect. So I thought like that is one way how students and lawyers can connect. With respect to your second question, which was more about what is the kind of service delivery mechanism that we have seen work. So service delivery, I would also like to talk about two primary actors that I saw in a legal aid system that worked really effectively. One was your paralegal volunteers, who are essentially people from within the community who are, trained in doing legal work. So they essentially help with community awareness and first response. Community awareness is basically mobilizing the community, getting them together, telling them about their rights. From there, then first response is helping set up clinics or desks, which are basically manned by PLVs and lawyers together. There in those desks, we used to get cases. Then those cases, my first response would be going to the police station, hospitals, all of that. And then comes your court representation, which is done solely by lawyers with the assistance of PLVs. So I thought this model of collaboration between a paralegal volunteer and a lawyer also was working really well on the ground. So yeah, I think that's what I primarily would want to highlight.
Thank you so much for that. And I think it's very interesting. You mentioned paralegal lawyers, and Raju, I think you engage a lot of paralegals and community volunteers. So when we say pro bono as a term, sometimes our imagination gets limited to just lawyers. So what has been like when you for Zenith's experience, what are the kind of factors which are missed in pro bono's definition, which are not just lawyers, and how it has worked for Zenith in your context?
Right. So when we work here in rural areas or the third tier cities, so pro bono is limited to just courtroom litigation and not about the consulting community or not relate to any assistant outside the court, right? So paralegal volunteers that we engage with are mostly students from the universities, regional universities. They have very least exposure of the practical courtroom and how things are going in the courts. So we engage with them, train them, and like mostly we try to build up a case using paralegal and the community workers, because they are the outside of the formal system of the courtroom, right? So they cannot represent client, they cannot go to court, do filings, right? So we are trying to engage them in most of the fact finding, right? For example, even how do we build an case just by applying RTI and getting clarification regarding legal issues. So we get the volunteered on that work, and community we ask community workers to build upon what information has been received from the various department, and then fact finding from the community workers mostly, because they are the one who are directly in touch with the people of the community, like Sharia community if we talk about here in Gwalior or Shivpuri. So that way we try to engage with them. Not only this, I guess we are also trying to build community leaders, so that they can lead their initiative on their own. So we try to send them to different training program organized by APU University, even the Zenith Society of Rural and Urban Tribal Initiative. So these kind of capacity building help us in building up the cases, because they are in direct touch with the community and people, right? So that has been our experience of.
Thank you so much, Raju, for that. And that brings me to the next question, which is like, and Aparimita, this is something which I often think that most of my friends who are fresh graduates or who are transitioning into litigation, financial privilege is not the first thing which we have, right? Especially if you are from a first generation, if you are not from a well-off background. What are the kind of like structural, social, and cultural barriers lawyers face if they want to transition to pro bono in your experience?
I think it's a very, very relevant question, because sometimes when we are talking about pro bono, like I think Anup sir had also mentioned that it's also important to talk about how your state legal aid mechanisms are working. So the point is that be it your state legal mechanisms or be it somebody who's doing it just by their own voluntary free will, or they're doing it with an organization, one of the biggest problems in a cultural like mindset that I'm seeing is the fact that pro bono work is treated as when I have time left, or whatever time I have left from the work that I have right now is going to go into pro bono work that I do, as opposed to the idea that okay, I have from 100% of my time, I'm going to take out probably like 5%, 10% of my time and dedicate it to pro bono work. So I think then what that leads into is a general idea that we're seeing that people are not able to essentially prioritize pro bono work over their paid work, and which is I think a very fair point, because a lot of the work that we are seeing people do are like really young lawyers. They are fresh graduates. They are people who have just gone independent, and I think at some level they are bound to prioritize their paid work more. So then I think the question really is that pro bono should mean that your the client who cannot afford or are vulnerable are not made to pay. But does it, I mean, it's a question that I also often wonder, but does it mean that the lawyers also don't get paid? I feel like that system is something which is not practically working out. As much as I like to see it on paper, it when we see it in practice, it's not particularly working out. So then the question is that ultimately it is the state's responsibility to ensure um, legal aid to people, and they should be the ones who should be incentivizing lawyers and paralegal volunteers to step up and do this work. This incentive can be monetarily, it could be, just in terms of it being considered later on if you want to, apply for certain things within the judicial setup. So there's several other like ways of incentivizing, which definitely should include monetary incentive. Otherwise, also what we're then saying is that pro bono work should only be done by people who can or have the privilege to be able to really, do that. I think that makes it really exclusionary also to some extent, because when you're especially working with survivors of violence, they are, a lot of them are like women and non-binary people, and it's important that we get within the legal aid system, get more women and people from marginalized communities to also enter this system, for which we need to fairly incentivize them.
Thank you, Aparimita. And I think eventually it goes to systematic questions of how our DLSs are functioning, how our pro bono culture is being built on a system level, and incentive is definitely one question. One of my friend Praveen, who works with in Bihar, was telling that panel lawyers have not received their money for last 5 years. And in Noida also, people say that if you are a part of panel lawyer, then clients will think you are a bad lawyer. So even the taboos of associated with pro bono lawyer, like us type ke lawyers hain, also needs to shed away. And I think I want to ask Raju that, especially because Aparmita work in UP and Delhi, in Gwalior, like city like Gwalior and Shivpuri, what are the incentives of these pro bono lawyers? Why are they doing pro bono? Like, what is their mindset? I also want to know that what inspires them to do pro bono lawyering.
I think most of the lawyers that we are engaging is with the Zenith itself. So lawyers are hesitant to even take up the cases pro bono. The lawyer who are already associated with DLSA are like not even entertaining. The case is already assigned to them. They don't take them seriously because there is no monitoring, strict monitoring. How do they, appear? Whether they are prepared and then appear. So these are the problems that we face with the when we are dealing with the pro bono lawyers here. But I think it is like now growing that individuals who are associated with organization like Zenith or Knee Foundation in Delhi. I think these people who have their perspective in place, right? They understand the cause of justice. They are taking them seriously and then representing client with the need of the people, right? What is the relief that they want, right? It's not ki what the lawyers is thinking the relief there must be for them, right? So I think this is the problem here. If we talk about the incentives here, I was speaking to one of the lawyers who was taking cases in like appearing in panel advocate as DLSA. They said ki they have not received funds that they have spent on photocopying or even filing cases. So they are facing like these challenges, and there is no one to regulate this, there is no one to monitor this, there no one to there's no one who takes care of their needs, right? So then how will they appear and effectively represent the client in the court?
Yeah, yeah, and that's completely true. I think that's also disincentivized them to take further pro bono cases. This is a case everywhere. And Aparmita, imagine if you are say made a decision maker of pro bono culture in country, and if you have given a responsibility to activate the mobilization in law firms, in litigational office. Um, and for a moment, I want you to take a pause on the systematic side, but rather on an individual players. what are the things which are missing in our law firms and our litigational chambers who have potential to do pro bono but still not opting? What are the things which are missing according to you?
See, one, I think the first thing missing is just the need or the understanding that okay, we should also be doing pro bono work, and it need not be that I'm like I said, you need to contribute a certain amount of percentage of your work or hours to do this work. And I'm seeing a lot of law firms now moving towards the idea of actually incorporating pro bono work within their number of hours that they have to give every month. And the second thing that I generally feel is that even when law firms and lawyers do decide to do this kind of work, there is just a disconnect on how do I get to do this kind of work. Because I know of people who have, are working at law firms who have our friends and colleagues who have, asked me, okay, how do I get into this work? I really want to, try doing direct assistance work. And there, I think there is a disconnect. So when there is, again, going back to a systematic setup, it could be a DLSA, it could be an organization that that works extensively just on this. I think it's important for basically law firms and lawyers to get in touch with these setups so that they're able to then take on that kind of work. And the third is that because again, I come from a background where the work that I have primarily done is gender-based violence, and that is a kind of experience that law firms and litigators usually who are focusing on civil law may not essentially have, but are also people who really want to learn and understand how to do this kind of work. So then what we also saw, it's something that works, is that you pair up people and take matters together. So somebody
Yeah.
who is a more seasoned lawyer who does domestic violence paired up with somebody who is maybe not a seasoned lawyer, who's just learning the ropes of how to go about it, paired together so that that person is also able to take on that work and take it forward. So I guess these are three main
Yeah.
issues.
And I think, and I also feel that that we need to make this thing cool, that law firm should think that pro bono doing is something worth pursuing. I think one of the thing which recently I was talking to another senior advocate who said, like, every chamber, one associate should have some time spent in legal society, like that, especially the senior lawyers. And I think maybe pro bono week can take a lead on this next year, hopefully, that we can leverage. And I think firms like Nishit Desai, Sam are already stepping in to put pro bono support to not-for-profits. Pro bono is a very good example of how amazing pro bono support they provide to not-for-profits for registration till like all the financial compliance as well. PACTA is another organization, and I think these are the system which are missing, and I think we need all the players beside the systematic players. And before I wrap up, I'll quickly do a rapid fire with all of you. Just 1 minute, and you have to just tell the first thing which comes to your mind. The feeling, and you can unmute yourself. The feeling you had at 2:55 p.m. today.
I was a little nervous.
Yeah, I was
Nervous?
just
Okay.
going to say the same thing.
Okay. Human rights.
But
Just one
also
word.
excited.
Exactly. Human rights. Just one word.
Important.
I think passion.
Passion. Um, Favorite mithai of NUJS and LU Odisha.
Favorite mithai? Cham
Yes.
Chenna
cham.
poda.
Sorry.
Chenna poda.
And
And
cham
for you,
cham in our mess. The mess cham cham.
Lucknow. Lucknow for you. One word.
Biryani.
Upper biryani. Raju, Jodhpur for you.
Dal bati churma.
And last, what one word comes to your mind when I say pro bono?
I think one word. It's really difficult.
Yeah,
Affirmative,
it's a
take it.
difficult question. Pro bono.
I can't just do fun rapid fire. There has to be some topical context also. But okay, I think I'll hold that question. I think pro bono is a difficult question to answer,
I'll
which we
again say very important, but requires an overhaul. I know it's not one word, but
yeah duty. Sean has
I
said
think
duty,
it's our professional obligation.
yeah.
professional obligation. I think for pro bono, I think I reminds of just marginalized citizens. I think there's a need of that, and I think I think with this we can just go to Q&A now. Thank you so much, Aparimita and Raju, for your I think we can do this session for over 3 hours if this continues. But I will say, Joanita has said more. If each of the speaker has to say one thing that will encourage pro bono, what would it be? One thing that will encourage pro bono in the country. Okay. Yeah, Raju and Aparimita, that's question.
I
If
think
each,
empathy. I think just a feeling that, as a lawyer, you need to be empathetic and understand that there is a big access to justice gap. So I guess empathy.
Yeah, empathy, compassion, and your professional obligation to do this. Moral obligation, in fact, if you are in legal field.
I also feel lack of savior complex, because I think most of the pro
Yeah.
bono lawyers and human rights lawyers still like feel that they are saving the citizens.
Yeah.
Anup, I would also ask you to pitch in that what comes to your mind when we say pro bono. If you can unmute and maybe speak.
Sorry, I was going to say overhaul, but Aparimita said that. Yeah, I'd say overhaul.
That's amazing. I think Shaun, I think we are ready to. I think if anyone has any questions, we can take more questions from chat box. If anyone has any questions, and or I will otherwise ask Joanita and Vishwa to also share what is their one sentence, one word which comes to their mind when we say pro bono, so that we can conclude on a nice tone.
I would say privilege. That's my word. To do pro bono is really the privilege.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. It can go either ways.
And I would say essential, especially in our context in India, it's essential.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Joanita. Thank you so much, Shaun and Vishwajit, for that, and Anup. With this, we come to conclusion of this session, and I think we have your registration details, and we'll reach out to you for feedback and to reach out to the speakers as well. This is a conversation which requires so much systematic interventions, and we are trying through pro bono weekend through different intervention. Anup has already set a good example of how a clinic can do so much intervention on death penalty, and now they are also expanding to criminal justice clinic across the country. Raju has already set the example of how law students can be leveraged to build legal aid and pro bono culture in the country. And Aparimita, you too have done everything with law firm to litigation. I'm so happy, and I was very happy when you left law firm to do human rights work. So I'm also very happy with that. And hopefully with Trustlaw and with pro bono culture, we keep on building with advocates for international development. Thank you so much for giving us up the opportunity to speak on this very, very important topic, and especially to invite us in the plenary session. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, John. John, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Rohit, for those insightful comments, and our sincere gratitude to Aparimita and Raju as well for that rich and engaging discussion. There was a lot to be learned there. And before we move on to closing remarks, very quickly, let me share some exciting news that Joanita touched upon in her opening remarks. We're very excited to say that India Pro Bono Week will now be an annual fixture held every year in the last week of November. So please, all of you participating, mark your calendars. This is just the beginning of a very long movement. Now, and over this coming week, we have an extraordinary lineup of events, including panel discussions, workshops, networking sessions, and knowledge-sharing forums, all of them designed to inspire, educate, mobilize, and involve more lawyers in doing pro bono. Sorry, I encourage each of you to dive in, participate actively, ask questions, share your stories, and connect with fellow advocates for justice. For the complete agenda, partner information, resources, or any updates that you may require, we invite you to visit our website at indiaprobonoweek.in. It will be put into the chat as well. And this can be a hub for everything India Pro Bono Week. And now, to deliver our closing remarks, I'd like to invite back Ms. Yasmin Batliwala from A4ID. So, Ms. Yasmin, over to you.
Thank you. So, colleagues and friends, we are at a threshold. Let me be frank. Pro bono is not a footnote in our legal story. As Joanita said, pro bono is not charity. It's not something we do when we have spare time, as Aparimita emphasized. Pro bono is part of what we do and what it means to be a just society. It's a bridge between those who have access to the law and those who do not. And in a nation of 1.4 billion people, where opportunity and vulnerability exist side by side, that bridge has never been more essential. Today, we've witnessed something remarkable. We've heard from leaders like Anup, who's spoken about how young students can commit to pro bono. And he should know, as the seismic impact of organizations like the Square Circle Clinic are pioneers who are reshaping the landscape of justice itself. Rohit eloquently drew out the issues facing law students today. And Raju spoke about the practicalities and the practical challenges that law students undertaking pro bono face. But we know that law students, young lawyers and innovators are burning with purpose. We've heard that 65% of India is under 35. Think about that. This nation's future is in the hands of people who understand something that previous generations are only beginning to grasp, that your talents are not alone. And I'm talking to students here directly. They belong to something greater. And this is where A4ID and Trustlaw step in, not as distant arbiters, but as partners, enablers, and accelerators. Together, we're not just talking about pro bono, we're building it. We are creating ecosystems where legal skills meet urgent need, where a law firm partner and a social entrepreneur can sit at the same table, where a law student's case can be actually something that's life-changing for someone, where collaboration isn't something to aspire to, it's simply how we work. The discussions we've had today, they matter because they shape culture. They matter because action follows from vision. Every insight shared, every connection made, every commitment to serve, these are the threads of something that we're weaving together. A fabric of justice woven by us all. And here's what really excites me, that the road ahead is not about one organization or 1 week. It's about each of you. It's about what you take from this session and embed into your law firms, into your organizations, and into your classrooms. It's about a lawyer in Bangalore who decides to dedicate 10 hours a month to someone who couldn't otherwise afford representation. It's about the NGO leader who partners with a corporate firm to scale impact. It's about the law student who realizes that pro bono isn't separate from law. It's the truest expression of what law can be. And remember, we're not starting from scratch. India has extraordinary pockets of pro bono excellence already. What we're doing is now connecting those pockets, amplifying those voices, and creating a movement that says, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is the India we're building, and we're building together. I don't know about you, but the energy today for me was full of possibility. And that's not an accident. That's a power of community that is united by a shared purpose. That's what happens when brilliant people choose to show up and say, I can do more. I can be more. I can serve. So as you leave here today, I want you to carry that feeling with you. Carry the connections that you've made around you. Carry the ideas that ignited something in you. But most importantly, carry the commitment to translate inspiration to action, a commitment to weave pro bono, not into the margins of your work, but into the very heart of it. Working with A4ID and our partners, we have tools, we have networks, and we have resources to support you. We have legal expertise, we have platforms, and we have a vision of India where access to justice is not a privilege, it's a birthright. So here's my ask of you. Don't let this week be a moment. Let it be a beginning. Let it be a moment you looked around, saw possibility, and decided to build something remarkable. So I want to thank you for your passion. I want to thank you for the courage that you will need. And I want to thank you for believing that the law can be an instrument of justice for all. So let us move forward together with our sleeves rolled up, our hearts open, and our eyes fixed on what is possible. Here is to Pro Bono Week in India. Here is to all of us. And here is to the pro bono culture that we're building together.
Thank you. Thank you, Yasmin. And thank you, reiterating Yasmin's gratitude to all our speakers, the panelists, and every one of you for joining us today. This has been a powerful start to India Pro Bono Week, and we look forward to seeing you at all our sessions that we have coming up in this week. As Yasmin has said, let's stay engaged, let's stay inspired, and let's grow access to justice together. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.